Dan, thanks for joining us. Why don't we start off with the one we ended there, we ended with there, rather, too big to fail. This is a big debate whether or not you effectively pre-fund your own funeral or whether your survivors are left to clean up the mess after you're gone. Where do you think this is going to end up?
Well, I think that something has to be done on Too Big to Fail. When we look at what happened with Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, they're kind of the symbol of the financial crisis, and doing something on Too Big to Fail is almost a check-the-box type item for policymakers. But I think as you get into the specifics, it becomes very difficult to do. The first point that I would say is that if we're going to allow companies that are over $10 billion in assets to fund this, you get into issues where companies such as Fidelity, which is home to many individual investors, would be funding some sort of fund to take down banks that would have problems, such as a Lehman Brothers. And I think that there's a lot of inequity in how that tax, per se, would be structured. The second issue that you get into with Too Big to Fail is if you have that authority and then you don't use it, what does that really say? For example, if we pass this legislation and then it's not used on Citigroup, do people around the world say, okay, that was just some sort of symbolic message and the government's not going to use it? It may actually make the situation worse. These are very complicated issues for Congress to deal with, but we think it will be somewhat watered down. We think the fund itself and who it will include will be watered down, plus the ability for the government to go in and use those powers.
Dan, why should there be any dispute here when even people, if I'm not mistaken, people like Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan support a resolution mechanism, and again, if I'm not mistaken, one that's pre-funded?
Sure, absolutely. It's a question of who's going to be included in the pre-funding, and I think that's what Congress needs to work in. The second is that we're trying to treat all banks very similar as if they are under the FDIC control, the smaller banks, and that's not true. I mean, we're dealing with investment banks, we're dealing with commercial banks. Some have deposits which need to be protected, as is the case with J.P. Morgan, but when you get into issues like Goldman Sachs, they really don't have deposits. So, you know, what are we trying to protect or even bring down itself? And I think that there needs to be some sort of separation between the two types of banks that we're dealing with as we get into issues of too big to fail.
Dan, how about the Consumer Financial Protection Agency? Given the fact that the Obama administration feels so strongly about this, is this likely where is this rather where we're likely to see the White House hold firmest?
Well, I think so, and I think you referred to it as the centerpiece of the Obama administration financial regulation proposal. We would agree with that. I mean, all these other issues are very important, but getting the Consumer Financial Protection Agency allows the administration wide latitude in being able to set financial regulations of the credit card industry, the home mortgage industry, and because of that, because you're delegating so much power to an executive branch, it's where Obama wants to fight, but it's also where the business community is going to set down its marker and get into this fight. But I really believe that you are going to get some new executive agency. The question remains what kind of powers they'll have at the end of the day.
All right, Dan, we've only got about 15 seconds left. We've seen a lot of horse trading around derivatives. Do you think that the Senate bill eventually is going to have to approach what the House worked out?
Absolutely. Senator Dodd put forward his marker. That will be watered down. It will come more in line with the House and the Obama administration, and derivatives will get done sometime in 2010.
All right. Dan Clifton, head of policy research at Strategas. Thanks for joining us.